Is.
All right. We are
There we are.
live. How we doing?
Good.
Happy.
Is this our first or second one of 2025?
This is the first one of 2025.
Okay.
We
Where have
did a
we been?
wrap up. We did a wrap up last year, December. That's actually being up and I mean, people are still that's been getting a lot of traction. But
Yes.
we've decided to do this one. I mean, you need a neck brace to keep up with what's happening in the market.
It's been a crazy couple of
In
weeks.
the news, right? We haven't really spoken to folks since, obviously since December. So there's a lot to catch up on. And so, Bassem, we're doing this session today. This one's not live. We're gonna record this and put it out on YouTube and our channels for folks to pay attention. But you can just see in the title here, DeepSeek, Nvidia, Palantir,
Even
tariffs.
before we get into that, how many government agencies have been closed in the last like 15 minutes?
Let's start a counter. We can start a counter. We'll take the over under. I don't even know how many agencies there are, so that's probably let's start there. Probably.
That's yeah, it is actually nuts. These little kids that are like interns at SpaceX are now in charge of all payment systems in the US.
Totally, yes. But
We're living in crazy times, Ellis.
Well, it's either that a lot of folks don't realize too. It's like a lot of the people that are working on Capitol Hill, the back office that write the legislation. These legislation clerks, they're also the same age too. So this country is run by 25-year-olds on Red Bull and Adderall, which probably explains a lot.
So my dad was in the Ontario, Canada government. He's a career environmental engineer writing regulations. If he was in the US, I think he would be long gone today.
That's right. Yeah. I also saw today that there were 40,000 government employees that accepted the walk offer from.
How many employees work for the federal government? Do we know? Let's check
that. Millions.
Really, that many?
Yeah. I think 3 million
for
in the federal government.
3 million?
Yeah.
Wow. That is a big government.
Yes.
And that doesn't include the active army. Wow. That is okay. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Let's get into AI. Enough of
the Well, the theme is fitting because, a lot of the conversation, one of the big moments that came out a couple of weeks ago was Project Stargate. Which is an intriguing name for something like this, but it's the announcement of $500 billion to build infrastructure for AI. And I think it's also, applicable to kind of the critical industries that we talk to every day that are going to be the ones actually building this and supplying a lot of the support and services and materials to it. Followed quickly by that was the announcement of DeepSeek, which
DeepSeek, but whatever.
Yeah, DeepSeek, which tended to pour cold water on it. I mean, I don't know. Give me your synopsis of the last 6 weeks.
I mean, this is my most read post ever on LinkedIn, so I think everybody's kind of leaning into it. A couple of things. I think it is DeepSeek. I think it's Fugazi AI, but we'll talk about that. The other thing is it revealed to me that we might be approaching bubbly times, maybe long approaching it. And the other thing that it revealed is I don't know that when people say AI, they really know what the hell they're talking about. When you compare certain companies to certain companies, it's like apples and giraffes. There's no comparison. So when DeepSeek comes out, first of all, we know it was a punk on the US, right? It comes out, it makes egregious statements. By the way, I still can't register for it. I don't know if it's because of the LinkedIn post or the Chinese Communist Party has decided I shouldn't be allowed to use it, but it's still down. There's a bunch of registration issues with it. And they claim they were under attack, which wasn't true. Basically, let me get to the real, to the metal here. DeepSeek is an AI application built on top of a pre-existing LLM. That's a lot of words, but what it really means is people did not understand the difference between AI infrastructure and AI applications. Does that make sense? AI infrastructure is what Nvidia provides. It's what ChatGPT does to train their models. Heavy duty machine learning, a lot of cranking of power. The idea is you have this AI infrastructure needed to create models. Then you have companies like Briq, like DeepSeek, that use cranked models to build an application.
Right.
So DeepSeek, which we knew, if you look back a few months ago, they were deeply aware that, well, Meta was at least, that the Chinese government was going to try to use Meta's model Llama, which is downloadable by anybody on this call.
Open source.
It's open source. Download LM Studio, install Llama. It takes about an hour total from start to finish, and you have an LLM on your computer. That's right. You're done. And you could put this on a web server and you can call it Ellis, and it can be everything Llama has built in this 5 gig file. That's not what AI infrastructure is. Meta built the infrastructure to build Llama and then created a 5 gig file that you can now download. All DeepSeek did was download that file and put it in some servers in China. I don't even know how they spent $6 million. You don't have to train a model at that point. Now, there's a lot of discussion. Oh, is this a reasoning model? It's a reasoning model, and therefore it was cheaper to train. It's not how machine learning works. You need reams of scored data to build a model. Scored data takes GPUs. That's it. What DeepSeek did was reveal that people do not know what they're talking about, specifically the so-called experts in the financial world. Second thing is it went in and just tried to embarrass the US by saying, hey, you have a $500 billion investment in infrastructure. Look, we were able to build this for 6.
Right. Yeah. The timing of the announcement was not accidental, clearly.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. And look, the other thing too is you talked about AI we conflate often, the chat bot with AI. They're not the same thing. No. And so I think to see companies like Nvidia be hit by that, it's certainly an overreaction. The chatbot world, and we've talked about this, is it's a race to the bottom anyway, which is a good thing. Yeah. It's going to become cheaper and easier to build these things, but the underlying infrastructure is not cheap. It's very expensive.
No, and I hope everybody bought Nvidia on the dip, and I think every market analyst is saying buy it on the dip. The reality is, whether they ban DeepSeek or not, and where they're talking about banning it, just like they're talking about banning TikTok or what have you, you still have to build these models and continually improve the model. The model itself. And so you bring up a good point, just as remedial AI, 4 swim lanes of AI infrastructure, model building, generative, the output of a model, a large language model. That is only part of AI. You have predictive and automation, what we do basically, predictive analytics around forecasts and such, and then automation, a digital workforce or workforce AI. Those are 4 swim lanes. Infrastructure, what Nvidia does, chips, the stuff you need to build models, which are generative. Predictive, workforce AI, automation. So those are the 4 swim lanes. When we conflate all of them, and under one big umbrella, I got to do something about AI. What is AI? When you conflate Nvidia with Palantir, they are different things. And I think that's really what was so freaky about what happened with DeepSeek. It just was so clear to me that people just don't get it.
Right. Yeah, no, totally 100%. I think, the chatbots have gotten most of the attention. Back to talking about Palantir. Palantir for the longest time has just been living in the infrastructure world, right? One of the reasons that you saw their stock, was trading 20% up last week, is that they're starting to be they're still entering, putting their AI into the application world. And I think what you're going to see is, Palantir obviously serves much larger on the government side. Yeah, more like the predictive side of the AI world. I don't know if Palantir has a chatbot. I haven't seen it.
A lot around predictive, a lot around, the big focus obviously is, let's be honest, it's the government contracts. And Peter Thiel did help, and JD Vance is a big Peter Thiel booster. So I think they're just going to continue to be on the ascension. But you brought up a great point. When Palantir is out there on the application side doing more around the predictive and more around the analysis side, having not just government contracts, but all the very large private contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, what you're seeing here is the normalization of AI-based applications. And Palantir, like you mentioned, I think there's a difference, another explanation, like Palantir versus, I don't know, SAP, both very large companies. SAP is a pure application company built as a traditional application company, built with a database, built with a front end, built to be used by humans to drive specific tasks like enter in an AP invoice or a purchase order. Whereas Palantir is not the system of record for that type of data. It's the system of action, the system of analysis, and what I think is most important, the system of anomaly detection. So the simplest idea is if you put in an AP invoice into an accounting system, that accounting system doesn't look at it for fraud. That's the system of record of the AP invoice is SAP or your accounting system. The system of insight is this AI-based system. So I think when somebody like SAP or somebody comes out with a story that says, we're doing AI now, it should be looked upon very, very skeptically. I mean, Palantir, Briq, few others, we are AI first applications. Briq built its first intelligent bot in 2018, way ahead of its time. Ellis, remember we were like hand waving, trying to explain
what this is. Absolutely. Yeah.
And now it's ultimately known as AI automation or workforce AI. That is the big differentiator between why Palantir's earning beat was so important. Is this a bubble? I guess is the big question. In some ways, it's a bubble, but in some ways, it's just utter confusion in the market and under education of what AI actually is. And I think what people are missing the point on, and I got an 11-year-old, everybody knows that. He goes to school, he's in grade 6. They're learning like old English words and like shunning technology at the school he's in. And you're gonna, it's over. Like this is genie's out of the bottle. They got to know this stuff. One of his science experiments was to like solve problems writing code. It took him like 12 minutes to do the science experiment because of ChatGPT. You can write code with ChatGPT. You can run Python. It tells you how to install Node.js and Java. An 11-year-old did that. An 11-year-old did that. You used to have to be a comp sci person to write the programs that were written in literally, less than half an hour. This world has changed. And I think the more people still like are confused about, DeepSeek, what is DeepSeek? What is Palantir? What is Nvidia? These are all different types of companies, but they're all being blanketed with the term AI. The biggest fear here, Ellis, and I know we're jumping around on topics, but the biggest fear here is that it allows scams to sneak up, like DeepSeek, that people will invest off of, like the crypto craziness, where you're buying NFTs or whatever, you're buying nonsense, you're buying meme coins that people, essentially are just gambling on. But it opens up the world to a bunch of scams. And the more scamminess there is around AI, the more it hurts companies like us, but ultimately it hurts the world because this technology is what's going to be the basis of our future. There's no question about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the other reason that, is there a bubble, on the investment side, there's a lot of money going into data centers and a lot of folks,
Sure.
watching this probably are working on those data centers. It does take a lot of compute to train these models. But the question isn't, will we find faster ways, cleaner ways, more efficient ways, cheaper ways to train the models? Yeah, eventually. But the issue really is like the amount of data. I mean, we've scraped the entire internet. There isn't a shortage of compute. There's actually now a shortage of training data to actually start training more of these models. And so I think, of course, you're going to see companies like DeepSeek. Now you have me saying it, start to find faster and cheaper ways to do this. But this won't be the first, and it's not going to be the last that we see doing this.
What you can do is take Llama or take a pre-existing model and then augment it with your own data set, which is what Briq does, right? So we augment that. It's a private model. It's not shared with ChatGPT, and you augment that on top. And so therefore, like the basis of what you're doing is there, and then you kind of, say that Tiananmen Square didn't happen or whatever, and then you put that on top of the llama model, and then when you ask it, it says, "Oh, I can't talk about that." But the idea here, though, is a very good point. Is about training data. There have been some lawsuits where people have won. I can't remember the most recent one where maybe I think it was the New York Times.
New York Times is one of them. Yes,
they're like, this is our copyrighted data. You can't use our training data to train your large language model. I think that is the craziest lawsuit ever, because once you put something on the internet, I mean, they could say you can't use it, but God knows what you're going to do with it. And I was sitting down with somebody in the entertainment industry in Santa Barbara, which there's a lot of people here, and we were just talking about a lot of these lawsuits that were coming up around scripts. You throw in 17 versions of an action movie and it spits out a new script, and you ask, is that legal? Who owns that script? And his joke was, that's what we've been doing manually for a century. You don't think there is no original ideas in Hollywood. You're just taking old other movies and rewriting the same theme and topic. And it's like Deep Impact versus Armageddon. It's the same idea.
Right.
So I think that trying to stop certain data elements to be uploaded into a model is a fool's errand.
Totally. And the other reason I think it's not a bubble is that, you look at a lot of the, one of the things that Alec Karp, who's the CEO of Palantir, said is that, a decade ago, if you had a goal you're an insurance company, reduce your overhead and your underwriting department by 10%. That's a 3 to 5 year project. 100%. He said today that's a quarter long project.
Right.
And so there is, a lot of companies, and by the way, he goes, if you're doing it and you have competitors that aren't doing it, competitors will have worse margins in 6 months. There is no doubt. Like that is not, no one's going to escape that fact that there is the application of whether it's automation, summarizing text, analyzing predictive analytics, the applications that are needed in, a lot of these critical industries that we serve is massive.
Yeah. And look, the reality is, and I keep on telling people this is like the PC. If anybody's old enough to remember when a PC was introduced to their company, I still talk to some folks that remember their company not having PCs. So the idea that you can hide from like this form of AI, whether it's automation, predictive, or generative, that just simply isn't going to work. It's like you saying at your company, we are not going to put desktop PCs in the 80s on people's desks. What are you going to do? You're going to manually, create ledgers like by hand. You're not going to use a spreadsheet. That is how monumental this has become. And as I will always say and have said, when Andreessen said, software is going to eat the world, AI is going to eat software. I think you're going to see a reemergence of the idea that you're using less software at work and doing more human communication tasks, planning, intelligence, because you can leave the crappy software that's been created over the years to bots to do the work you don't want to do and do actual thought-provoking work. That's what's happening now. And whether you're a 10-person company or a 10,000-person company, everybody can buy a laptop and have a business. Everybody can buy AI at this point and do something better. And that's a big differentiator.
Yeah. No, I mean, there are, I think there's a huge opportunity for, companies to, save some like serious points on margins. Yeah. I know there's probably, I think the other problem with DeepSeek and that whole, the noise around it does cloud the practicality of it. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the other thing too is like, these things feel very ambitious, I think, for a lot of companies.
Yeah.
But like you said, I mean, the hundreds of billions of dollars that have been spent on, let's just take ChatGPT, for example, can be accessed for free by a student to write a program.
100%. I think one of the big questions has always been outstanding is what's the practicality of AI in today's work? workplace.
Right. Yeah.
And when you think about it, that question is kind of shocking because we're all, for companies like Briq, Palantir, we've been doing this for, half a decade now, right? It's 5-7 years. Like we've been there already kind of in the trenches using practical use cases. These new bubbly AI companies that are like, let's, you should try this, upload some data, let's do some search or some other, crazy nonsense. That's where the danger is, because the more the people in the business office think AI is kind of this frothy, generate a meme type task, the less likely they will be adopting it. So the thing that really hit a nerve with me, and people are texting me, I'm like, why are you so mad at DeepSeek? What hit a nerve for me is it showed to me that it's really easy to disrupt the thought stream of continuous improvement and breakthrough improvement using AI by just putting out a press release. And that means we're still at the early adopter stage. We're really at the ultra early adopter stage, because if DeepSeek can come out and make up some stories and freak out the stock market and scare a bunch of executives, that's a problem. We need to establish this idea that AI isn't this frothy fakeness.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And so, we've our attempt at doing that is personifying, I guess we call it anthropomorphizing. I'm sure which literary term to use there, which is, we call it the digital worker. And it's the idea, and the digital worker really does encompass, it's another version of the spectrum of AI that's available, right? It's a robot. It lives in the cloud.
It's a thinking robot.
It's a thinking robot, right?
Body. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And so I think what I have always recommended companies to do is and really think about the automation side of this, especially in things that take up a lot of time to do, and mistakes in that workflow are very expensive.
Yep.
And you're using people to do the work. Yep. There's this concept of using the digital worker to literally type in, build spreadsheets, read documents, log into systems, build reports. This is not I call it the Wonka Buffett scale, right? Is it something Willy Wonka thinks is a good idea, or something that Warren Buffett, a pragmatist, thinks is a good idea? Some of the things that people are doing are on the Wonka scale. Don't get me wrong, but most of the stuff that can be done now is 100% being used by hundreds of companies just at Briq alone to do.
Right. Yeah. And you think about what, that digital robot can do. I was talking to this very large Spanish conglomerate. They do everything from design, build, construction. They own and operating stuff all over the world, multi-billion-dollar company. And they were, for their construction division, talking to us, and we're talking about actual use cases of what they can do using Briq. And a big part of it is the procure to pay cycle. So tracking tickets and getting tickets and looking for, triangulating purchase orders to invoices, all things humans can do. All things humans can do. A human can pull a ticket. A human can look at a purchase order. A human can look at an invoice. But there's not enough hours in the day getting thousands and thousands of items. Just the practicality of having a machine do that at lightning speed, never taking a smoke break or a coffee break or calling in sick or being mad at work and screwing up. That's what we're talking about. And that's where people end up talking to me and they're like, wow, there are some really practical applications for AI. And we were looking for those practical applications. Something as simple as reading a set of drawings and truly understanding the comparison between the version I was just sent and the version that is sitting in, my shared drive. That's a simple task. The number one question that Otto, our chatbot, gets is, how much did I pay for that widget last? Because the alternative to that is going through 300,000 POs. No human's going to do that. So that's where we talk about practicality. And the practicality, the sooner we move to the practicality index, where it's these aren't fantasy land 6-year plans. In the short term, you're going to use automation to solve real world business problems, or predictive or generative real world business problem today, not 7 years from now. And so that's what we need to make sure we keep on talking about. As AI evangelists, we have to make sure that we keep people grounded in what can you do now and what's real now. That's what I think.
Yeah, and I think on the Wonka side, the long term stuff is things like, hey, what is the right mix of my what project manager and subcontractors should I use on this job to maximize profit?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's would be really helpful to do. It's difficult now, obviously, in construction because of the variability.
Sure.
It's easier in some of the other industries we see, like manufacturing, where
Yeah.
conditions were more controlled. But there are some really interesting outcomes that will be available to you, but you really do have to start with some of the practical things before you moonshot.
I mean, moonshots are great, like you said, but here's something that's like dead simple and so simple to understand. I try to explain to my dad what Briq does, and I don't think he gets it yet. But the idea here is like something very simple. We get 6 quotes from 6 different vendors. On those 6 quotes is a bill of material of 100 items. Okay. Those 100 items are on 6 quotes. So we have 600 items. Some of them are the same, some of them are alternatives. In today's world, without Briq, the estimator looks at these 6 items and checks a box for one of them. The PM approves it. And then they hand it to accounting, who puts in one line item for the purchase order that says stuff, $1 million. And then things are being delivered, things are being executed, things are being installed. And then I get an invoice with 13 items on it, and we put $30,000 against stuff. And that's it. That's reality today. And then you're like, well, how are they fully bought out, or is it over? Where's the change orders? And it's all chaos, and they're going to their accounting system. It's like going to like an 800-year-old man in the basement. It's like, can I look in the accounting? I just picture every accounting system being like a dusty shelf, of books
Right.
that are out of date. AI reads the quote now. AI does not care that there's 100 line items because they'll just type it. So just type the 100 line items. AI reads the invoice and matches the 13 to the 100. You would have done that as a human. AI is not it's not a novel workflow. It's the reality of a workflow that has to happen, but you don't have enough expertise or bodies to do. One great analogy Nancy Novak actually gave me the other day was Tesla cannot change the rules of the road. They can't change what a stop sign looks like. They can't change what a crosswalk does. They can't change what you do at the red light. You got to stop. But they can teach a machine to operate within that confine. There is a playing field for every workflow. It exists. You can't change it. You might want to transform your business and say, this workflow is stupid. Well, this workflow is there for a reason. So it's going to live that way. Stop fighting the workflow and start using AI to make the workflow easier. You're not going to change the tides. You're just going to have to learn how to swim against them. That's it.
Yeah, that's great. When you frame, by the way, the AI conversation like you just did there versus Nvidia, Palantir, chatbot, ChatGPT, you see the practicality in this, right?
Right.
You got to cut through, and look, we intentionally used probably in a provocative title
we're
to get you to listen.
Okay. The whole point.
But the point is that like there is noise out there around this stuff. The practicality that think like Bassem did around, there's this concept of we call it the 3 A's, the atomize the workflow in steps, automate what can be automated, and what's left you augment. Meaning you do it more, you do it faster, you use analytics or some of the predictive analytics to predict outcomes better.
Yep.
It's, it's simple in theory, but it's practical. And I think like we really need to we spend a lot of time helping companies kind of cut through the bullshit.
Right. I think there's the overarching idea of like this AI. There's a button here somewhere. I don't know. This is a new platform, but the idea around an AI readiness assessment. I say no to more companies now than I say yes. And I think I did post on LinkedIn about the change of the VC market, survival of companies like Briq through a very, very free money market where we would take on good and bad clients. And Ellis, this firsthand, our ideal customer profile isn't just a certain type of company of a certain type of size. It's a psychographic profile of somebody that's ready to adopt this. And, if I speak to a director of IT that goes, I really want to play with AI, they're not a good Briq client. If I speak to the COO of a company that says, I want to scale my company by cutting down on overhead, having a more productive staff, being more profitable, then it is. I don't think this is a first technology point where operations needs to lead it, not IT. IT needs to support it. Operations, finance, the actual business needs to bring it in with actual practical use cases where you say, I need help doing this, scaling this, doing this better. Hey, 30 minutes.
Love it. All right. As we wrap up, stock tips I'm just kidding. No stock tips. This is not financial advice. But where do you we're bullish, everybody, obviously, on Nvidia and Palantir. We're bullish.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, thanks everyone for joining us and for watching and for listening. Thanks, Bassem, for the time, and we'll chat to you live on the next one.
Thank you all. See you later.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers. Bye-bye. Cheers.